Actress Ruth Wilson as Mrs. Coulter in His Dark Materials, acting alongside puppeteer Brian Fisher as her daemon, the Golden Monkey. Fisher has the intricate and difficult job of walking, talking, and even breathing in sync with Wilson. For the series, production company Bad Wolf utilised the talents of puppeteers and visual effects artists to create over 2,000 shots, as well as 50 different creatures. So why go to all this effort with puppets, only to eventually render the animal in CG? And why was it that the VFX artists needed to wrestle each other? Even though the animals look incredibly real, the only animal actor on set belongs to Lord Boreal and is played by an actual snake. This is Russell Dodgson, a senior visual effects supervisor at Framestore, who first had to cast the series, looking at different animals that would play the humans' external souls, the daemons.
It was very clear that we wanted to go for a naturalistic performance for the daemons, because we didn't want them to have a kind of caricature-ish or cartoonish quality to them.
He worked with pre- and post-visualization company Painting Practice to look at animal reference images and brought in animal experts to advise on the creature's gender and their correct groom and coloration. The VFX team then ran animation tests in facial rig software with dogs sniffing and monkeys jumping to try out the facial movement. They realised they needed to perform dialogue through the animals' bodies instead of just using their mouths and facial expressions to emote.
So we would always start with the rhythm of their body and then just add in the lip sync as almost like the final touch, rather than saying we've got to get all of the shape phenomes perfect every single time they speak.
Puppetry legend William Todd-Jones then devised a series of proxy stand-ins, rigs and puppets for the actors to interact with. And this is where Brian comes back in. For close-ups, some of the puppets were sculpted heads. Other slinky-body styles of puppet were used for quadrupedal or bipedal animals. When actors needed to demonstrate the weight of daemons, the team made grey, furry cushions called bucks. These had weight and shape to make it look like actors were holding daemons. But why bother with this complex, laborious process?
Puppeteering and giving the actors something to play off of was critical, because we're not just making kind of creatures that chase after people, we're making parts of people. You know, we're representing their soul. It's really amazing how you can have a very simple puppet face, and just the way that like a puppeteer just does a little head cock and you suddenly just throw emotion onto it.
Another advantage of using puppets was the puppet pass. Take this scene with Brian. The scene is blocked with the puppets, so the crew and actors know where the daemon would be. They deliver dialogue or sound to the actors via the puppets to rehearse the scene. Brian makes noises like barks or clicks or even breathes, so Ruth as Mrs. Coulter feels more in tune with her co-star. They shoot the scene once with the puppet and then with just an eye line, or nothing at all. The actor gets so used to having the puppets there that they then perform to the empty space. This allows the director to use the take with the puppet if the performance is better, as the VFX team could then easily edit out the puppet, and this was often the case. Now, that's all fine for something as small as a monkey, but the team had to think bigger for something as sizable as a polar bear.
For Yorick and the bears, it was a whole different story. Loads of rigs for them. A full-size head sculpt was measured so that there was a stick attached to it, that when the performer Joe Tannenberg put it on his belly button, it became the right height for Yorick's head. It gave you the two eyes and the nose as a shape and the full volume of the head, which was great because Yorick's really imposing and you need someone to feel like there's something in their space.
And it wasn't just creating space that made the puppets so important. Puppets assisted the action when actors needed to be thrown around the place or physically shifted. There was the basher bear to ram into stunt people and push actors to the ground, like in this scene with Harry Melling. There was also a riding rig for Daphne Keane to sit on, a backpack rig for her to get on top of someone's shoulders, and a 4-legged fiberglass standing puppet to show a polar bear's height. But the team also had to go further than using this elaborate set of puppetry tools. In order to capture the bear's movement, including fighting, the VFX team used their own bodies and wrestled each other. They filmed themselves grappling, using mixed martial arts references, as the way bears wrestle is quite similar to humans. Painting practice then built the entire bear palace in the Unreal Engine game simulator, and the team filmed the fight in that. To live track the set, they used a tool called Vanishing Point Vector, which is a brand new piece of tracking software. It leverages augmented reality and real-time tracking by placing a camera sensor on top of the main unit camera, so the bears were real-time on the viewfinders for the camera operators.
We could have made the entire bear palace in CG, but because we had so much time in there with the actors, we knew that we wanted that to be a space. With any technology, there's always the chance of something going wrong, or you wanting to completely adapt to a different thing, or change the animation, which you can't do live there and then. So we also then just bring the puppets out, which are kind of true, tested, analog way of doing it, and we bring them out and work through it that way.
Then began the painstaking process of CGI detail for the bears and demons. It took 700 days just to make polar bear Ulrich Bernison and his armour. Amazingly, they didn't find bears the hardest individual animal to make. Birds, such as the Master's Demon, were some of the trickiest. The point where the wings come together and interlink is also tricky in 3D. A computer finds it difficult to process them coexisting in a similar space, so the team had to use puppets to land on actors' arms, or take off, so they had a better visual reference for the CG. Even though you see over 50 puppeteered and CGI animals in the final product, the amount of demons in the final pass was limited. The big character moments remain, but having too many background animals was deemed distracting. So, what you see as the Bear Essentials formed, ironically, through a painstaking multi-department process.